Pagavare, nirisa nisa pagavare, nisa nisa mani pagavare.
Loving Sai Ram and greetings from Prashanti Nilayam. During the last couple of years, Swami has on many occasions mentioned a string of 4 words. These 4 words are Vyashti, meaning individual, Samishti, meaning society, Srusthi, meaning nature or creation, and Parameshti, meaning God. So the 4 words are Vyashti, Samishti, Srusthi, Parameshti, and they mean respectively individual, society, nature, and God. Swami then goes on to say that man is a limb of society, society is a limb of nature, and nature in turn is a limb of God. It's just like, our fingers being part of the hand, hand being part of the arm, arm being part of the body, etc. Now the question is, will a limb ever hurt the body? Never. But you see, the funny thing is, man, who is a limb of creation, is doing precisely that today. Many of his actions harm society and also ravage nature, as Swami points out often. Now, why is Swami mentioning these 4 words instead of 4 others that he used to mention once frequently, namely Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha? I have thought about this for quite some time, and today I would like to share some of my views with you. Before I get started, I should perhaps say a few words about my classroom experience, since that is relevant. Some of you may be aware that for many years I have been teaching a course that is listed in the curriculum book of our university as an awareness course. Essentially, this course deals with spirituality, and in my class I handle postgraduate students as also students preparing for the master's degree in business administration, that is to say MBA students. Now, at the beginning of every academic year, I face a problem, standard problem. Students come in with 3 years of prior education in Swami's university, either in the campus here or in the campus in Vrindavan. All these students have been exposed liberally to spirituality. They have attended awareness classes earlier. They have heard many discourses by Bhagwan and so on. So they all wonder, without of course saying so in as many words, what on earth is this guy trying to tell us? We know it all. This is a complete waste of time. To be fair, the students do not actually say so, but then I can read signs and also the body language. By experience, I have found that the best way to deal with this problem is to go practical. So I say in suitable and polite words, of course, okay, you fellows, you have heard it all, and you know everything that is to be known in the field of spirituality. Now, here is a practical problem. One of our listeners to Radio Sai has posed this following question. I make up a question and I give it to them. And then I continue. Now, how would you people answer this? I am supposed to give an answer to the listener, and let me see if I can get some help from you. The boys are now in trouble. They hem and haw, and pretty soon they throw up their hands. The answers to practical questions are not at all easy. Gently, I bring them to the ground by reminding them of what Swami says about bookish knowledge and practical knowledge. What we need in the world is not so much of bookish knowledge as practical knowledge, as Swami reminds us very often. Okay, all that is fine, but what has all that got to do with the 4 words with which I started this talk, namely Vyashti, Samishti, Srusthi and Parameshti? Everything. Practical knowledge or practical spirituality is all about the linkage between these 4 words. In what way? Very simple, and it all revolves around action. We all act and do so all the time. We may not realize it, but all actions are important, even though many of them may seem trivial to us. Swami is drawing attention to the hierarchy of limbs in his cosmic scheme for the following important reason. When an individual acts, he or she must so act that the action concerned does not in any way harm society, does not in any way go against nature, and is not against the purpose for which God put us on earth. You may be somewhat mystified by all this, and so let me give a practical real-life example. All of us know about the spate of hostage-taking in Iraq, followed in many cases by gruesome murder. It's headline news practically every day, and to make matters worse, many TV channels actually show the ghastly beheadings. In a recent BBC radio program, Robin Lustig, who is a veteran anchorman for BBC, asked a British professor of journalism the question whether the media was guilty of building up the terrorists, as some people alleged, and whether without the media, the terrorists simply would not have resorted to the sort of things they now are doing. The professor replied, well, there is a synergetic relationship between the media and the terrorists. You journalists need the terrorists because they provide you with news. And the terrorists need you because you give them publicity. So it can indeed be said that you are actually helping the terrorists. Robin Lustig then shot back in his most persuasive tone. But Professor, I am a reporter and I have an obligation to tell what I know. Are you suggesting that I abandon this obligation? The professor replied, I am not saying anything about giving up your obligations. But as a reporter, you know there are priorities. On any given day, you collect so many pieces of news. And at the end of the day, as a reporter, you say to yourself, well, this is important, that piece of news is not, and so on. And having made up your priority list, you file your reports accordingly. Similarly, the sub-editor who prepares the newspaper for print also exercises judgments and allots space suitably before the newspaper goes to the press for printing. All I am saying is that exercising editorial discrimination, you could draw up a list of priorities so that the acts of terrorists are not always at the top and often get edged out because of lack of space in a newspaper or lack of time in a broadcast, TV or radio, whatever it is. When I was hearing this, Swami's string of 4 words promptly came to my mind. I would now like to tell you how I view this whole matter. In the issue of media and terrorists, there are 2 basic entities that need to be considered. Firstly, there is the reporter who is an individual. And secondly, there is society which gets affected by acts of terrorism. It's interesting that Robin Lustig used the word obligation. An American journalist in his place would, I am sure, have used words like, people have a right to know, and so I have to report what I see or come to know about. This business of right to information is being pushed very hard in the Western world, and everyone who does so seeks refuge under what is called the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. For those of you who do not know, the amendment in question is an amendment to the original version of the American Constitution, and this amendment is supposed to guarantee freedom of speech. These days, people seem to forget that freedom comes along with responsibility, and in the name of the First Amendment, people are being allowed to peddle obscenity, porno stuff, and what have you. I am not quite sure how people can claim I have a right to do all these things, which unquestionably disturb society, and badly too, I might add. All these people in the media talk eloquently about the right to do this, the right to do that, and so forth. But what about their responsibility? When this question of responsibility is raised, the media people dismiss it contemptuously by saying, we know all about responsibility. And now, is that correct? I do not think so. Excessive dissemination of negative news, obscene news, and so forth does make an impact on society, a very harmful impact, I might add. But of course, the media promptly dubs all such talk as antiquated, meaningless, and so on. They may say all that, but the fact of the matter is that society does pay a very heavy price for the rights that the media claims for itself. The media does not pay any price, and it is society that is left sucking its thumb. Just to give an example, there was a very high official in the Reagan administration in the United States who was accused in the press of all sorts of things. This poor fellow then had to resign, and it took him a long time to clear his name. And when that happened, the newspapers reported that news not on the first page, but deep inside on the 18th page or so. So you see, when they accused him, they did so with bold headlines on the first page. But when he was exonerated, that news was relegated to a simple line on the 18th page. And so the poor man lamented, "They gleefully murdered my reputation, and what are they now doing to restore it?" The media simply says, "We feel sorry for that person, but that's his tough luck. We are in the business of stories and are not concerned with reputations." Is that responsible? Let me wrap up this issue. I know it can be debated at length, but I choose to be guided by Swami's teachings rather than this amendment to this constitution or the right of that person to do that and so forth. Irrespective of all man-made laws, there is an overriding moral law to which we all must bow. If we fail to bow to that moral law, then there sure would be adverse consequences. Claim rights and show violence indiscriminately on TV, there is sure to be an increase of crime in society. Glorify the right to spread pornography and obscenity, and sure enough cases of teenage pregnancy and AIDS would register a sharp increase, and so on. The long and short of it is that if we take Swami's hierarchy seriously, then actions we take must be such they do not harm society or nature. The point I am making is far from trivial. Take the case of automobiles. Before World War II, it was the auto industry that propelled America forward as an industrial giant. That is a fact of history, and there were legitimate grounds for America to go in for cars in a big way. But in the post-war world, many countries are trying to advance in a similar manner without any basis. In other words, what they are trying to do is to go forward by pegging on to the auto industry. China is trying hard to do that, and India too is toying with the same mantra. I am afraid that adding automobiles recklessly is not going to do this country any good. Every year, over 30,000 cars are being added to the roads of each of our 4 big metropolitan cities, that is to say Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta and Madras. As it is, the roads in these 4 cities cannot bear the traffic. Imagine adding more and more cars to the already choked roads. Next, there is the pollution. It is becoming unbearable, and more cars means more carbon dioxide burden for the atmosphere to carry, and greater is the risk of greenhouse effect. More important than all of this is that because of very bad driving, and in India we never seem to take driving seriously, because of bad driving, very bad driving in fact, the number of traffic accidents has increased alarmingly. And to add to all the trouble, people are urged to take loans to buy a car. In the old days, if you wanted a car, you had to pay a full price before you got the keys for the car. But these days, one can make a down payment and drive away the car. Okay, lots of people do this, but soon there is a payment problem for many, and that leads to all sorts of troubles for these poor people. I mean, the list of problems is endless. In other words, some decision maker somewhere takes a decision, and that decision impacts the whole of, or at least a good chunk of society. And this keeps happening all the time. Let me give another example to illustrate how profound Swami's point is. Recently, a hurricane hit the small Caribbean island of Haiti. It is a very poor country beset with all kinds of problems. But this hurricane literally devastated this tiny island. Many of you might have seen it on television. Hundreds of thousands of houses were totally destroyed. And by the latest count, over 3,000 people are dead and many thousands are missing. There is also an acute shortage of food, and so on. During the hurricane, there was very heavy rain, thanks to which there were huge floods. These floods just roared down from the hills creating innumerable landslides. And these landslides in turn buried large numbers of people all over the place. You may impatiently say, okay, but what has all that got to do with Vyashti, Samishti and all that? Don't you know that hurricanes are not man-made? Well, I agree that hurricanes are not made by man, but man can and does compound disaster by thoughtless actions taken earlier. And that precisely is what happened in Haiti. You see, for decades, the huge forests of Haiti have been ruthlessly destroyed by humans, sometimes for selling the wood, sometimes for making room for agriculture, and so on. We may see advantages in all this kind of trade and commerce, but we must also remember that forests not only prevent floods, but also help the water in being absorbed into the ground. Cut down trees and forests, and water rushes down immediately from mountain slopes, incidentally taking away valuable topsoil also in the process. So you see, innumerable are the ways in which thoughtless actions, driven by whatever be the reason, can and do cause environmental disaster. So I have told you something about the way actions can affect society and also how they can affect nature. I am aware that many devotees firmly believe that it is enough if they have a one-to-one relationship with Swami and that everything else can be wiped off the radar screen and dismissed as irrelevant. In fact, some of these devotees, so-called, think I am a nut to talk about the things I talk about on the radio. I know how these people feel, but I can also tell you that I have done a lot of thinking, serious thinking for many years, every single day in fact, triggered by the many things I constantly hear on the radio and what I read in the newspapers. I have gone deep into Swami's Vahini series. I have spent a lot of time with the 12th chapter of the Gita, which spells out in great detail what exactly the relationship should be between man and God. I have reflected a lot on many of the discourses of Bhagavan that I have heard. And then, when we were preparing the programs on the Vedas for Radio Sai, I did a lot of background reading on the Vedas and the Upanishad. I have also read bits of Aurobindo and Gandhi, not to mention what contemporary thinkers like Swami Ranganathananda have to say. After all this, I am firmly convinced that Swami's message in its fullest sense alone can save humanity. That is why I am trying repeatedly to get that message across in a larger context and not just in the context of the individual and God. In case you are not able to grasp the trend of what I am trying to convey, let me put it all very simply as follows. As I see it, I as an individual must not act so as to hurt my family. In the same way, my family must not act against the well-being of the community to which the family belongs, the local community. In turn, communities must foster humankind as a whole, and humankind, if it is to be human at all, must not go against nature. In the hierarchy of Swami, Parameshti or God is my father. Nature or Srusthi is my mother. Society or Samishti is my family consisting of my brothers and sisters. Supposing you agree with me and look at everything this way, then surely it ought to be clear that nothing that I do must hurt my brothers and sisters. It must not cause any harm to my mother, and it must not cause harm to my father. Won't you agree that the hierarchy discussed by Swami is very important? By the way, recall what the Lord says in the Gita. He says that he comes down when the practice of Sathya and Dharma decline. That means he wants Sathya and Dharma to be adhered to by one and all. And what does that mean? According to Swami, it means that we must act such that our actions do not harm society and such that our actions are in harmony with nature. It is such actions alone that God would be very pleased about and accept with joy when offered to him. We can't just offer any old action to God saying Krishnarpanam. Those actions must be pleasing to God. If we think we can amass wealth by all kinds of questionable practices and then make a donation to Swami saying that this would please him, I am afraid we have got it all wrong. Whichever way we look at it, the message is the same. I hope you are able to get the essence of what I am trying to say. For Sathya and Dharma to get restored to their rightful pedestals, we all must strive earnestly to go into the substance of Swami's teachings and go in depth. After doing so, we must reflect intensely on what those teachings mean. If we keep on doing that, we would inevitably come to realize that the bottom line is, as Swami so often reminds us, love for God and fear of sin. It is these two alone, namely love for God and fear of sin, that can lead to morality in society. If there is no morality in society, there cannot be any peace in society. So, if peace and harmony is what we want, then we had better start bowing to the moral law before we even think of man-made laws, which are often designed to suit the convenience of particular segments of society rather than the whole of society. Whatever be the area of human activity, be it medicine or education or whatever, the individual or Vyashti must act so that Samishti or society and Srusthi or nature are not in any way endangered. Do you agree with me? Probably you don't. It does not matter. Just write and tell us why you don't agree with us. At least we would become aware of the reservation you have. Thank you and Jai Sai Ram.